Welcome to my American History Notes, where I read things I've learned about American history, share them with you, and hope that you will take some of the names and events and places and dates and explore yourself and come to your own conclusions about American history. So I'm going to start where I left off last time. In 1867, the first U.S. steam-operated elevated railway opens in New York City. The next year, George Westinghouse will invent the Westinghouse air brake, which will be crucial in the development of train travel. In 1872, he will introduce the automatic air brake. Also in 1868, the knuckle coupler, a safer alternative to the old standard Lincoln pin system of joining rail cars, is patented by ex-military officer Eli Hamilton Janney. The Transcontinental Railroad is completed on May 10th, 1869, at Promontory Point, Utah. There are 1,006 miles of line built by the Union Pacific Railway from Omaha, Nebraska, joined 680 miles built by the Central Pacific Railway in from Sacramento, California. The world's first cable car streetcar begins operation in San Francisco. The steel-arched Eads Bridge at St. Louis, Missouri becomes the first bridge to span the Mississippi River in 1874. The 1,595-foot long Brooklyn Bridge is also known as the Great East River Bridge, opens to pedestrian traffic in 1883, featuring a steel wedge truss for stabilization. It's designed by John Augustus Roebling, but after his death is completed by his son Washington Augustus Roebling. Electric trolley cars, designed by engineered Frank Julian Sprague, run successfully in Virginia in 1888. The first Ford motor vehicle, or gasoline buggy, is test driven by its inventor, machinist Henry Ford, in 1893. Edward Goodrich Acheson will patent the Acheson process for manufacturing graphite by heating a mixture of coke and clay in 1896. The Duryea Motor Wagon Company of Massachusetts will put the first motorized car on the market in the U.S. in 1896. The same year, the Stanley Steamer will be invented by Francis Edgar Stanley and Freeland O. Stanley. Now we move to other scientific realms. Psychologist Edward Lee Thorndike is born in 1874. He will pioneer in animal studies at Columbia and will state that psychology should restrict its study to behavior only and not conscious experience or mental conditions. This will change the way psychologists make mental measurements. The first class in sociology in America is taught in Yale and in 1875 by William Graham Sumner. The first department of sociology won't be until 1893 at the University of Chicago and will be the center of American sociological studies between the world wars. Lewis Henry Morgan, an anthropologist, that was my major in college, had already done some groundbreaking work on the Seneca Indians, and in 1877 publishes Ancient Society, where he says that all human societies evolve from savagery to barbarism to civilization. John Broadus Watson is born in South Carolina in 1878. He is the founder of behavioral psychology. This form of psychology is restricted to objectively observable behavior and explains it in stimulus response terms. We're rapidly leaving the era when human behavior is described in biblical terms and the facts about what makes people do what they do from God's point of view. The experts will depart from, in a vain attempt to define behavior in purely mechanical terms. Sin, free will, and other previously accepted doctrines of the Bible will be discarded, resulting in the mess we're in at this point in time. William James and Carl Lang in the 1880s will reduce emotion to a consequence of physical stimuli. G. Stanley Hall will found the first formal psychological laboratory in the U.S. at Johns Hopkins University in 1882. Congress passed legislation in 1890 dividing each state into districts, mandating a state hospital for each one. Hospital, quote unquote, not asylum, is from now on the preferred term for such institutions. Gardner Murphy, the psychologist who furthered the concept that developmental and environmental factors determine personality, will be born in 1895. This continues the idea which contradicts the basic inherited sinfulness of man and the ancient idea that people are born with much of the personality they will grow up with, as I read that the Romans believed. David Wechsler is born in 1896, and he will introduce verbal and nonverbal tests to determine intelligence. William James will introduce the term pragmatism to audiences at the University of California in 1898. Franz Boas becomes the first professor of anthropology at Columbia University in 1890. Racist and champion of abortion, Margaret Sanger of Planned Parenthood is born in 1883. Physicist Josiah Willard Gibbs begins publishing a series of papers outlining the laws of chemical thermodynamics in 1876. Edwin H. Hall will discover the Hall effect, the production of electromotive force within a conductor or semiconductor carrying current in the presence of a strong transverse magnetic field in 1879, the same year that physicist Albert Einstein is born. Einstein will revolutionize physics by overthrowing absolute space and time as understood since Newton's day and coming up with a mathematical way of going around the fact that there is no evidence of any motion in the earth, discovered by an experiment called the Michelson-Morley experiment, performed in 1881 and confirmed in 1887 by Albert Abraham Michelson and Edward W. Morley. Einstein's belief in a God that is not much more than a mechanical force and in his elimination of absolute space and time will have a profound effect on science, education, and society. Michelson in 1882 will help pin down the speed of light, which has recently been challenged as the constant it was once thought to be. Astronomer Asaph Hall discovers the two satellites of Mars, Phobos and Deimos, in 1877. E.C. Pickering invents the meridian photometer and lays the foundation for what the experts perceive to be more accurate stellar photometry. In 1881, Edward Emerson Barnard makes the first photograph of a comet. At an international meeting in Washington, D.C., the prime meridian is established as running through Greenwich, England. The Lick refracting telescope on Mount Hamilton near San Francisco becomes the world's first mountaintop telescope in 1887. The American Mathematical Society is established in 1888. Pickering and Wilhelmina Patton Fleming introduced the Harvard classification system for classifying stars according to their special characteristics. Astronomer and photographer Edward Barnard will discover Amalthea in 1892, or Amalthea, the fifth satellite of Jupiter and the first to be found since the work of Galileo in 1610. Astronomer George Ellery Hale helps begin the operation of the world's largest refracting telescope at the Yerkes Observatory in Williams Bay, Wisconsin in 1897. William Pickering will discover Phoebe, a satellite of Saturn, in 1898. Now we're going to talk about discovery of dinosaur skeletons, metallurgy, geology, things like that as we continue, and then take us right up to the atom bomb. I mean, we have a lot to discover, a lot to discuss, and I hope that even if you are bored to death by some of what I said, you'll find something in there that you go, I got to look this up, and I want to find out about this. So thank you for listening. I hope you have a great day.